the last time we had a conversation, we're talking about SMEs trying to adopt online methods to reach out to their customers.
Correct.
And here we are, this being hindered. How are your business friends coping?
So the impact on SMEs has been very severe. Many businesses have lost contracts. Many people have lost money. There's been a lot of distrust among businesses. People are not able to deliver. And there has also been a wider impact on GDP. There's been a calculation globally that every time you shut down the internet, as a country, you lose between approximately $23.6 million for every 10 million people. So it means for us as a country, being we about 40 or so million, we are, for each of those days that the internet was closed, we are losing close to 80 million US dollars. So it's very significant, particularly at a time when we are just going through the, shortly after the COVID-19 lockdown and the opening up and businesses trying to pick up pieces and things like that. So the impact has been severe. It will be determined with time. Different organizations are going to look and assess the impact, but what I can say at this moment is that it has been negative.
Well, looking at SMEs, they were hit by COVID-19.
Correct.
And here we are, we're having the internet hitting them in a certain way.
Yes.
As an association,
yes,
what do you think should ideally be done in these times?
Well,
because the government is saying this is a security
yes,
issue we are trying to solve.
Yes.
And there's the other aspect of the economy. How
Okay,
do
so
we address these issues at the moment?
Firstly, I think I'll start by saying that any government has a legitimate right to ensure that its citizens are protected from security threats. But the response should be proportionate. And I think the discussion here was the response or the reaction, was the shutting down of the internet proportionate to the risk? That's something we can't know because we don't have all the facts. But in our opinion, we think that you can attempt to engage in a targeted, you identify the risk, and then you are able to shut down particular segments of the internet that you think are exposed or are a danger to society as a whole, as opposed to creating a blanket kind of shutdown of the internet.
In your own opinion, which areas do you think have mostly been affected? You're representing the SMEs here.
Correct.
But which other areas do you think have mostly been affected by the internet shutdown?
Any business that relies on electronic transactions. As a country, every single day, we conduct about 300 million transactions online. So this is very cross-cutting, I can tell you the truth, because if you look at the financial sector, if you look at the telecoms, these are facilitators of various sectors across port. So except if someone is completely delinked from the internet, that's when they cannot be affected. But even then, they may have suppliers, they may have people along the value chain who may be hampered by the lockdown. I mean, we are happy that the internet was, on the 19th, it was kind of reopened, though social media is still restricted. But I think we need to re-examine and look at the efficacy of some of these interventions. We don't want to question the motive, but we want to say the response should be proportionate to the risk.
Let's talk about the impact of this shutdown on the tax revenue over time. How is it likely? We know the URA adjusted its 20th January deadline for the business people to file their tax returns. But what impact is this likely to have on the revenue collection?
Now, first we want to thank URA for recognizing the fact that taxpayers had been put in a difficult situation. You know that internet was off, and then the deadline for filing had arrived, and then they listened to appeal and extended it by 2 days. Would have appreciated if they would have extended it probably by 5 to 10 days, but nevertheless, they gave us those 2 days. I would think
but
that as URA...
Is that good?
No, it was not good enough. Would have appreciated 5 to 10, but they took that decision and we're happy. The Baganda say if you have something, if someone gives you something small, you argue when it's here. So we appreciate that 2 days, but to appreciate 5 to 10.
Yes.
Now, if you're talking about e-government, talking about URA, people filing their taxes online, we're talking about people registering businesses online to URSB, we're talking about people paying for various services through the internet. We believe this idea of switching off the internet in and out is not a good thing long term. It reduces the confidence of investors in our country. And I think this is something we need to look at. How do we look as a country out there? And how can we address the security risks that we face without necessarily bearing a very huge burden? And I've told you the impact that this will have on GDP. I've told you that this will have on our image as a country. I told you the losses that businesses will incur. So I think we need to have a discussion with a wide range of experts. Let's not just say security experts. Let's say, okay, let's have security experts, economic experts, and so on. People who know how things are moving globally and say, okay, there is a threat, but how can we address it without necessarily harming the long-term interests of our country and the livelihoods of our people.
From a business perspective, there are already individuals that are using shortcuts to access different social media platforms,
yes,
VPN and the like.
Correct.
Does it make sense that some are able to use social media and others are not, especially for those that use social media to reach out to their customers and to market their products? Does it make sense?
It's interesting. So I think government knows that people are using VPN at the moment, or some people are using VPN. And I think, in my view, if it's true that people are using VPN very widely, then there is no point to keeping social media closed. Let's reopen it, and as I said, let's try to look at the threats. Where do they come from? Yeah. Which people are misusing social media, for example, and how can we shut out those people without necessarily harming everyone? Because social media is the lifeblood of many businesses these days. It's no longer a platform for gossip. It's a platform for business. It's a platform for many things. So I think, in my view, let's not have some form of collective punishment because we believe, oh, some people are misusing social media. Let's try to say, okay, how do we address the threat and allow other activities to proceed? So I would strongly recommend, in my view, that the social media is put back on so that business starts to operate once more.
Well, since we do not know when it will be opened completely to the entire public,
yes,
as a business, an SME business owner, what would you tell them? You know,
what would I tell government or the business
owners? The business owner who is looking at the internet and saying, this is where I market my produce. So, should you advise them to use the shortcut as well? Are there other ways they can look at? You know, I know recently when we were covering elections, we had to use SMEs, SMSs to get responses from the people watching.
Correct.
What other ways can they look at to survive the current trend?
Okay, so dear SMEs, I wouldn't encourage you to engage in any illegality. Even though people are using VPN and so on, but I think for me as a leader of an umbrella body for SMEs, I would like to encourage our members to abide by the law. And what we are doing right now is to appeal to government and say, look here, this thing is doing more harm than good. In the interim, I think our SMEs need to look at alternatives. They need to go back to the old ways. Let's also try to find out, how do we talk to our fellow people? How
Sending
do we
bulk SMS?
Bulk SMS. Let's go and talk to them physically. You know, sometimes when you're on social media, we have completely forgotten person-to-person contact. So let's use this time to rebuild those bridges. Let's try to use our old and tested methods, as we hope that this thing will be resolved very soon.
Well, as we wait for the entire internet blackout to be completely restored, what are some of the incentives that you need, that you think are needed to stimulate economic growth through ICT? Okay,
so first of all, ICT is a driver, and in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, this should be the focus, digitalization. But as a country, we face a number of impediments. One, digital literacy. People need to be taught, how do you use your mobile phone to market, to promote your business and things like that. The second is that we need to bring down the cost of ICT infrastructure, the cost of phones, the cost of laptops, the cost of tablets. Three, we need to bring down the cost of data. And what government can do is to kind of cut down taxes on that. This money can be recovered, because what you do is that as you start taxing online businesses, you recover the money that you would have foregone by reducing taxes on the data. Then the biggest culprit is the over-the-top tax, which URA itself has recommended that it's no longer fit for purpose. So I want to recommend that the over-the-top tax is removed, because it does not help matters, both for government and for the users, and for the young people who want to use the internet to innovate. We recognize the valid concerns that government might have regarding people misuse the internet. But again, you cannot apply a blanket kind of punishment or measure just because a few people are going off the line. You look out for those people and then put them back online. So we believe that over-the-top tax, in our view, needs to be done away with because it doesn't make economic sense.
Some people lost their jobs. I'll take you back to a previous question.
Yes.
Some people lost their jobs. We know that some Ugandans really feed off what they work on, what they get in a day.
Yes.
And there are now people that have lost their jobs because internet, social media platforms have been shut down.
Yes. Yes.
I did see someone on social media saying, I think she runs a laundry sort of business, and she reaches out to her customers like that, posts here and there, and she's not able to do that. Do you believe we are likely to see more people losing their income, source of income, as a result of social media being shut down? Yes,
the impact is huge, and I've given you the figures: 23.6 million US dollars for every 10 million people. You know, so it's too much money per day. So I think, in our view, government needs to reconsider this decision. Needs to find a clever way of making sure that they moderate or they regulate activities online without necessarily hurting everyone else. And government also needs to take a position regarding digitalization. Do they look at it as a threat that needs to be curtailed, or they look at it as a facilitator that's going to be an enabler and the platform for the creation of jobs? And I think we would urge them to look at it more positively as a facilitator through which jobs can be created for young people.
All right, thank you so much, John Walgembe. From what I gather, it makes some security sense to you to shut down the internet.
Not necessarily. I'm simply saying that what is the threat?
They should identify
what is the threat. Yes, because you see, just because people are shouting, you cannot go and cane every student in the school because a few people are making noise. You identify those who are shouting and you dismiss them, you suspend them. So what is the threat? The response should be proportionate. So I'm not here to say, because I've not looked at the facts, I cannot make that determination. But I believe, somehow, I tend to believe that was disproportionate.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. You're still watching NTV Weekend Edition. We'll be back shortly.